What's up, guys? Welcome back to Engineered Muscle Podcast with Coach Mo and Coach Malfa with another episode on teaching you guys the 5 steps that'll be the game changers for you in your muscle building journey. And if you Google right now how to build muscle, you'll freaking get 10,000 articles and 50,000 different videos teaching you how to build muscle. And most of you have probably already watched them. And guys, we're here to tell you that a lot of that shit probably wasn't for you. And there's a reason why you are not building muscle even after watching those videos and applying those steps. So, as scientists and as engineers and as coaches, Madison and I were talking that it feels like it's our duty to really share the science and the practicality of the exact things that actually cause hypertrophy or cause muscle gain. And we actually promised each other that we're not going to go off tangent. We'll keep it focused for this one. So, Madison, go ahead and say your introductory remarks, and then we'll get started.
Oh yeah, hell yeah. We're gonna deliver a shit ton of information on this one. A lot to learn, and because a lot of people, I'm gonna go over 5 and even one little 6 pathway for muscle building, the underlying mechanics of how your body, what causes your body to build muscle. And some of you are utilizing 1 and maybe 2 of these, but there's several of them that you're probably not. So that's all this potential that's left on the table you could be using to grow that much more effectively and that much more.
I love it. All right. So all right, Madison, for the sake of this podcast, just so we could keep it focused, I will be the guy who's going to break down if there's any confusion that I would think that the end user is having based on the scientific topic that you'll talk about. And then I'll also keep this pretty focused. So let's dive right into it. So imagine that I'm Johnny and I started going to the gym in college because I gained some fat, or I'm a working professional who has a corporate job. And, I've been trying to build more muscle for, health reasons. And I just go to the gym and, it's just not happening. I run on the treadmill and then fat loss isn't happening, but I want muscle gain. So give me the 5 things, starting with number 1 on what is it that I, as Johnny or Charlie, need to be doing. So
okay. So I'm gonna lay out what those mechanics are. These are the basic stress pathways. Basically, for every stress, your body tries to adapt to it. Your body tries to so the next time that stress comes along, you're gonna be able to handle it better. So these are the 5 and 6 ways that the body stresses that they respond to with building muscle. Okay, so the first one I'm going to bring up is mechanical tension. So what this is putting tension or stress or force on the muscle. So this is really done with, this is one of the ways that are most commonly used, right? When you go weightlift and you lift and everyone's like lifting heavy weights and doing linear progression, these are sources of mechanical tension. Now, to optimize this, right, more weight will produce more tension, but so will a better mind-muscle connection, a better contraction of the muscle, keeping tension on the muscle, right? So a lot of times when people are training, they'll let the tension fall off the muscle and they'll use other muscle groups or they'll throw the weight around, but really controlling the weight with progressively heavier weight will put more and more mechanical stress through that muscle.
Got it. So here we're talking, let's say I have a training program I follow, and how would you apply this on bench press? What do you actually mean?
Yeah, so taking bench press, or if we're talking muscle building, we don't want to talk bench press, we want to talk pec, right? So if you're a power lifter, you're going to talk bench, but if we're a bodybuilder or you're just building muscle, we're going to talk pec. So a bench press is a choice that we could use, and a pretty good one. So when you do it, you need a really good quality of motion. You need to be able to keep the tension in your pec while you're performing your bench press, which means that you're not using your shoulders, you're not overly using your triceps. The primary mover is going to be the pec, and you're going to be minimizing the usage of everything else and keeping tension throughout as much of the rep as possible there. So what that would look like is, again, having a really good mind-muscle connection, getting a good stretch. There's tension in the muscle during the stretch, and then coming up as far as you feel tension. On the bench press, sometimes you will lose tension as you get to the top, depending on the person and their grip and specific stuff. But going as far as up as much as you can before you lose tension. If you're a person who goes to the top and there's no more tension there, if you're building muscle, maybe cut it just a little short. But if you feel it all the way at the top, go all the way to the top. So keeping the tension so that it never lets up, and then progressively week to week increasing how much weight and or contractile force you're putting through that muscle. So if you can contract harder and really squeeze the muscles together and really flex the pec through that rep, that's also increasing mechanical tension. I also, for really learning how to do that, machines, certain machines are really good for that. I really like like a hammer strength press, or there's also like, some gyms have these cable press machines where there's like a seat and then there's like cables roughly chest press height, and so it's like a cable chest press machine. That one's also really good for keeping tension and teaching you how to squeeze through it. So those ones are useful for that as well.
I like it. Well, so for the sake of this conversation, I really like what you just said. Is as a beginner or as an intermediate, a lot of people know the word you just mentioned, which is time under tension, and a lot of people know that they need to lift more weight, right? Which, as a beginner or as an intermediate, which should I prioritize? Because my form is questionable, and I hear all these people talk about, time under tension, and they also tell me to lift heavy, like the old school OGs tell me to lift more. What should I focus on?
Well, unfortunately, there's not one or the other. It's both, right? You don't want to be just thinking about, I want to move more weight, because your quality of rep is going to break down. Likewise, I don't really recommend doing like a tempo. So I don't really have you necessarily count how long down or how long up. What I say is to control the weight. So you want to move slow enough that there's tension, so you're not dropping it down to your chest and not just throwing it back up, right? You're controlling down and squeezing up. Now there might be some acceleration, and it should be a hard squeeze, depends on the weight. And over time, you want to increase weight, but it's always weight you can control. For muscle building purposes, the control of the weight is extremely important.
Got it. So for those of you listening right now and you're confused, and because you've been trying to lift heavy, but then you don't, like, your form breaks down, what we're really saying is that lift enough to where you can control the weight, squeeze be in control. Don't let the weight control you. Because here, guys, we're trying to build muscle, and there's a science behind it, and mechanical tension is the first thing that we are talking about. So remember, controlling the weight, and I think what Madison is really talking about is self-regulated tempo, like not having that, hey, like 3-4 second tempo, whatever, like not counting, but just self-regulated in your head, like, and then letting it go down slowly. So that's very good. Let's go into number 2, unless you have something here.
So again, a lot of people are kind of aware of the first one, right? And most people are familiar with and do, whether they know they're doing it or not. So the second one is called metabolic stress. What metabolic stress is, right? So your metabolism is your body's energy system. It's what provides energy to your whole body and also to your muscles. So we're going to talk about the muscles today, right? So what's going to...
Because that's what we do. We build muscles.
Yeah. Flex on them. So
all day.
So when we're stressing the metabolic pathway, we're stressing our energy reserves, but also part of what happens is when your body makes energy, which comes in the form of ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate. That's your body's basic energy currency. So everything you eat, all your stuff gets converted to ATP eventually, and that's what your body, that's the energy language your body speaks. So anyways, when your body makes ATP in a anaerobic environment, which is what we're going to be doing more weightlifting, which means without oxygen, there's some metabolites that are formed, right? So this includes lactate and also hydrogen ions, and this is what's responsible for that burn. Right, so when you get that pump, you get that burn, that's part of the metabolic stress and the metabolites building up. When the metabolites build up, they help pull water into the muscle, which is what that pump is, and that burn. So that burn and that presence of the lactate and that change in pH creates a bunch of downstream hormone signals that releases some growth hormone and IGF-1, mechanic growth factor, which is a IGF-1 variant. And these things will lead to satellite cell donation. Basically, there's basically like stem cells around the muscle that give their nucleus to the muscle cell that allow it to grow more and or have more fibers.
So metabolic stress, like if I'm a dude who just lifts for fun, who wants hypertrophy, how do I optimize for more metabolic stress?
So how do you do it, right? So that's what it is, right? It's another pathway that's separate from the first one that results in growth. So metabolic stress is achieved typically with higher reps, by putting the muscle under tension. You're also starving it of oxygen and blood flow. When it's under constant tension, it's hard for the blood to get in there. So your body starts having to, you'll notice your pump will increase a lot when you do that. And that's part of that. So you will use higher reps. So it could be 12s, 15s, 20s, even upwards of 50s. So like, for instance, I find the delts are very responsive to this type of training. So for lateral raises, I will often do, my first set, I will do 50 reps of just constant tension, constantly moving it and just trying to pump blood in there, pumping blood in there, pump blood in there. Okay? So it stresses this metabolic pump where you'll get an insane pump, and I guarantee your shoulders will end up being more sore than they've ever been. So I'll do 50 reps my first set. I'll go up in weight, I'll do 40, go up in weight, I'll do 30, and then I'll do a couple 20s after that. For lateral raises, I almost never ever go less than 20 reps. So that's just one example. So if we go back to chest, since we're talking about chest,
That's correct.
Yeah, that's for lateral raises specifically.
I was like, because you said like you never go below 20. I was like, below 20 on squats, Bill. That's the shit that causes you nausea and vomiting.
20s on squats are fantastic. That's life changing.
Yeah, guys. So it's strength and muscle. Just know that's why I keep wanting to clarify a lot of these things, because I know you guys are probably taking notes. This is a loaded podcast. I just want to keep clarifying that. So if you need to pause, because some of you are listening to it while driving, some of you are listening to it while at work or something, like if you need to pause and absorb the information, please do, because this is some game changer, $10,000 information we're dropping on you. And trust me, a lot of college professors who specialize in this stuff don't even teach it, or some of them don't even know it. So this is the reason why we're so breaking it down for you guys. So back to you, Madison. Certain muscles respond better to metabolic stress, correct?
Yeah. Certain muscles, it also depends on fiber type for that. But all muscles will respond to all of these. Some are more responsive to some that's more of a fiber type thing. But if you've always been training, so if you've always been just going for mechanical tension for your chest, and you've never done this type of stress, it's going to be something that muscle is going to be responsive to. It's something that's going to be novel to that muscle. It's going to be a new stress, which body's going to go, oh shit, what the hell is this? I need to adapt to this now. And you're going to get really good results out of that, which is why it's good to rotate around through all of these. They're all different pathways, so you can have synergism between them. You can get some benefits for using all of them. So if we're going back to that chest example, to keep it parallel between the two examples, right? This would be like doing like a set of like 12, 15, 20 on bench press, right? And really and this would be like, it's a little less focused on, you still want to have a good stretch and squeeze. Stretch is pretty important too, but it's a little more kind of a constant pumping motion, right? So that there's never resting. You never want to lock it out and catch your breath. You want to be just kind of going. So it just kind of builds up, and this type of work, this is the chasing the pump stuff, right? You're doing this well when your muscle feels like it's literally ripping the skin and you're cramping up because you're so pumped. That's doing this well.
No, I like it. So as a Johnny going to the gym, I go to the gym. The first thing would be mechanical tension, keeping that in mind with full stretch, full squeeze, just controlling the weight. So mechanical tension is about controlling the weight, guys. Metabolic stress is more about seeing how your body responds, like what muscle group, like Madison said, delts will respond a lot better with higher reps. So just keeping those things in mind with the whole metabolic stress factor. Madison, can you clarify that a little more? Because I think there's still some confusion on the metabolic stress. But give us like a really good example of how can somebody apply this into the gym.
Okay, so mechanical tension would be like doing like a nice and controlled 6 to 8 reps.
Right.
So kind of on the heavier-ish side, really controlled, really just tension on the muscle. The metabolic stress is stressing the energy. It's it's going for the pump. It's more reps, more time under tension. Right? The mechanical stress isn't about pushing the time under tension. It's just about maintaining tension, right? The metabolic stress is going and going and going. The more you go, the more metabolic stress you get, right? Eventually, you will not be able to go because you're so pumped, and your muscle will run out of energy. If you ever had that thing where you reach that failure where you just like, oh, I can't lift it anymore. It's not that you're not strong enough to. It's 20 pounds, but you just don't have, your muscle doesn't have the energy. So it just.
I've had that happen multiple times. Yeah, right. Very common.
The metabolic stress is that burning. It's the more it's burning, the more metabolic stress there is.
So as a beginner, as an intermediate, when should I prioritize what? Should I prioritize, lifting in the 5 to 8 rep range with controlled tension, or should I do like 20 to 30 reps?
That's a great question, but I think we should answer that at the end after we cover the others, because all of these will fit together, and there's different ways to do it. There's no one way to put them all together. I'll give a couple of recommendations of a couple of ways. Sometimes you can just do like, I'm doing mechanical tension today, I'm doing metabolic stress today, or you can mix it within the same workout.
Got it.
So there's different ways to do it.
By the way, I'm loving playing the devil's advocate right now, or like playing the dumb guy, just because I think like when I listen to podcasts and if they go that specific, 2 guys talking and they both know exactly what they're talking about, and here I am listening to that concept in business, sales, and anything in any industry. I'm like, bro, like I just don't get that part, and I wish there was somebody in the podcast asking that question. And
yeah, it's great because you're pulling more out of me and make sure I explain it so that everybody.
All right, number 3.
Okay, so number 3 is muscle damage. So this is literally causing micro trauma and damage to the muscle cells and the muscle tissue, right? So this one's also, so all of these overlap to an extent. There are unique pathways that have unique signaling effects, but there is some overlap, right? You're going to get some metabolic stress when you do mechanical tension. You're going to get some muscle damage when you do it, right? So I just want to put out that there's some level of overlap. Okay, so muscular damage, like I said, this is causing micro trauma. So this again happens from, typically this one's done with a little more heavier weights. This one's, the eccentrics are really important on this one. Basically things that are just kind of more physically pummel the muscle. So again, heavier weights and eccentrics is the the best examples of this.
What is eccentric again?
So okay, so the eccentric is the lowering phase of a repetition. The concentric is the raising or lifting. An isometric is a hold at a point in the range of motion, and the eccentric is the lowering. So we are technically strongest. You can do the most weight in an eccentric, then an isometric, and then a concentric. So you can lower more weight than you can lift. So here's an example of a intensity set, or intensity technique, I should say, and a way to really drive home the muscle damage. You could theoretically have a weight that you can't quite lift. Okay, here's two ways. You do a normal set. Okay, you do what you can. When you reach basically failure, you have a friend lift it to the top, and then you just lower it and fight the negative the whole way down, right? And you have them lift them to the top and lower, and then you just lower the negative after you went to failure. Likewise, so that's one way, and the other way is to have a weight you can't quite do, that's just like a little bit outside your zone. You have them started from the top, and you just lower it down, and you get that tension out of it. So this is also really good for mechanical tension, and it's really good for muscle damage. So it's good for both those patterns.
This is like, so I guess a really good practical application of this would be hit your 10 reps on that weight that you were like, I can barely hit 10, and then get there, and then have your buddy John lift it up, and then just lowering part is where you use mechanical tension to control the weight in the eccentric portion. So like when, especially in the example of a bench press, let's say you can do 135 10 times for 10 reps, right? So
10 clean.
What is it?
10 clean reps. Yep.
10 clean reps. So you go to 10, and then you're like, all right, like mentally you know that you can't do another 2 reps without help. So then your buddy John, he helps you get the weight to the top, and then your job is only to control the lowering of that barbell. And so I guess like in the muscle building pathway, is that where the muscle fibers are getting damaged, or what is happening?
Yes, that's what is happening. So it's typically, so it happens during, again, heavy weights and or other times as well, but during that lowering, that's when you can imagine like little tiny snaps happening along that fiber, and little tears as it's trying to fight and hold that fight that.
And guys, in the case of muscle building, tearing of fibers and damaging the muscle fibers is a good thing.
Right. So that damaging, right, is a signal that tells the body you need to build this up because this got broken. So then it goes back and fixes it, right? So that's that stress. And I actually just thought of another really good way to do this is having your partner force the eccentric, which means have them put, so like you'll see doing bench press, you would have them, let's say in the beginning, here's totally another example of how to do this. For the beginning of the set, you have them push down on you, and you fight them and fight them. And then you go up by yourself. And then they push down, and you fight them. And those actually, and I mean, bench press isn't the best way to do this. It's actually better to be done. This one is better and safer on a machine. You can do it on bench press. It's just safer on a machine or like a leg extension or whatever. But when you fight someone else, you get a lot of tension out of that, and you get a lot of work. Those are really good.
And think about it like in evolutionary terms, right? Like it just creates that competition, and when two humans go into competition, you turn into another human being versus just weights, versus just objects, right? Like
it's like fighting or MMA too. It's you versus someone else, and it brings out that primal like kill or be killed, I think too. So that's a very good point.
I love it. Cool.
So there's one more point I want to bring up about the muscle damage thing, and is that it's this one you need to be careful with because it is tough to recover from. So it needs to be used sparingly and intelligently because you'll get a lot of soreness, and it'll also just take a bit more recovery. So it needs to be used sparingly, and you can't just go balls out with this one.
So I like the word use there, sparingly. So why shouldn't I do this with every set?
Right. So if you were to do it for every set, it would beat you up so bad. You'd be up, probably not be able to lift that for a week. And it might just break you down so bad you can't fully recover from it. So you're not going to get a positive net benefit, right? You cause so much damage that how much growth you got was actually less, and you could theoretically go backwards. Not that.
So, yep. And we'll do a whole other podcast on fatigue and performance, but sticking to this topic. So is it a better idea to walk into the gym, let's say it's it's chest and back day. Is it a good idea to just have one exercise where you will do this type of intensity set?
Yes. I would say you probably would do this for 2 sets max on a day, and I wouldn't necessarily do it every day.
Perfect.
As a general guideline, there's times to break it, but in general,
so let's say the biggest muscle groups we're talking about that people love training are chest, back, and legs. So on chest day, you can do it with your hammer strength chest press, where you're going to have somebody do that for you, right?
Yes. Yep.
And on back day, what would be a good one? Lat pull down.
Yeah, lat pull down's a pretty decent one. And then you have someone like pull down on the stack, or you put the stack so heavy and you have them heavier than you can do, and you have them pull down to get you to start from the bottom.
Yep. And then on leg day, you can do leg extensions that are great for quads, especially when you go with those you feel it.
Yeah.
So guys, there you go. This is how you utilize muscle damage stress pathway to enhance hypertrophy or increase size. So I think those 3 we've covered: mechanical tension, which is the time under tension in a very controlled manner, not in a very regulated way, more like a self-regulated tempo. Number 2, the metabolic
force through the muscle for that one, right? So that's the biggest thing, is the actual force that's going through the muscle you want.
100%. And then you have the metabolic stress, which is the energy pathway, the pathway that, if you do on certain muscles, doing more reps will get you more. So for example, Madison gave the example of shoulders for delts. So when you're doing lateral raises, pushing the limit, right? Like going for 20, 30, 40, 50 reps. And when you're coming down, increasing the weight and really, really going into that anabolic window where it's anabolic pathway where there's no oxygen, but you feel the burn.
Yep. So that's the key word, burn. Key word for the metabolic pathway is burn, baby.
Burn, let it burn. So that's metabolic stress. And remember, guys, this is muscle building, not exactly strength. For strength, this is a whole nother animal. So we'll do a whole nother podcast on that. But this is metabolic stress. Then we'll come down to muscle damage. So this is where now we're talking about words like eccentric, concentric, and isometric. And these things are really important, especially for the guys in the intermediate to advanced range. So if you've been lifting for a few years and you're pretty familiar with the movements, your form is on point. This is when you start dabbling into the big boy stuff. This is when you start getting into this stuff. And for example, on chest day, using this on hammer strength chest press, then using it on lat pull downs, then using it on leg extensions, and don't get into the mindset that, hey, I need to do this every day for every set. No, just like Madison said, just no more than 2 sets, and even then, listening to your body on this one too. It'll do you a lot of good. But if some of you, because I know muscle damage is one of those where some of you will start ego lifting, and there's some value in ego lifting when it comes to weightlifting, but I feel like for my beginner folks out there who are listening, some of you have other things to worry about than worry about intensity sets. This is more for intermediate and advanced people. So any concluding remarks on that, Madison?
No, that's good for what we got right now.
Perfect.
So I'll go into the next one.
Number
So the
4.
fifth is cellular swelling. So what this means is literally taking the muscle cell. So if you can think of a cell as like a balloon, right? It's basically a water-filled balloon. Sure, there's some other stuff in there too, but if you just think about it as a balloon, but by blowing up that balloon and stretching the elastic material, the outside of that balloon, that is also a pathway for growth because the cell membrane or the rubber of the balloon, right, which is the cell membrane, when that starts getting stretched to its limit, body goes, oh fuck, this is problem. This cell's gonna pop. So that also will cause it to need to grow. All right. So that's the pathway. It's blowing up the cell to the point that it's stressing the outside. So how you do this goes back to pump stuff. So it's kind of related to the metabolic stress because the metabolic stress will create those metabolic byproducts, which will pull more water into the cell, right? So it's pushing blood and pushing water into the cell. So again, this is more reps as far as training, but nutrition and hydration are also very, very important for this. So making sure your electrolytes, your salts, your potassium, creatine is helpful, vasodilators, those sorts of supplements are helpful for this because you just want to be able to deliver blood. But you still have to train for it, right? So you need to be able to pump the fuck out of it, and then once it's pumped, pump it more, essentially. And then pumping it combined with one of the last factors I'm going to talk about also will put stress on that membrane and on the and really maximize it. But I'll go into that when we hit the last one.
So to sum up cellular swelling, as a beginner, how do I get to that?
Okay, so as a beginner, you want to make sure you're eating good, you're drinking water, and you're hydrated for the gym. I recommend that people take some potassium salt pre-workout because potassium is one of the electrolytes that are intracellular, meaning in the cell. Now, all salts are osmolytes, which means they pull water. So you want to pull water into the cell, so potassium is the one that you want versus sodium. Warning that if you take too much potassium, it can kill you because your heart, when the injectable potassium is how they actually kill people for the lethal injection. But you also eat potassium all the time. But anyways, a little bit of it's known as, it's a couple different products, but the most commonly one you can find in your grocery store is called New Salt and U Salt, and it's just potassium chloride. Right, regular salt is sodium chloride, but this is potassium. So you just have like a teaspoon or so in water or whatever pre-workout you're having. That will help increase your cellular hydration, making sure you're well hydrated with water. Creatine is also useful. And then pumping work. So more reps, constant tension, good squeeze, good stretch. Just pump, and blood. And just like longer, again, more reps, longer sets, so drop sets, anything that's going to put more blood in there.
I like
enough
it.
Sense?
Yeah, so staying hydrated, more reps, more sets. This is like one of those
extended sets versus more sets, so just longer sets. So whether it's a drop set or forced reps or whatever, longer sets, rest, pause.
So this is one of those where like it's hard to apply up front, I guess. This is more happening on a biochemical level.
If you're again, when I put the last one in, this one will also be, I'll give a direct way to use this one. But yes, being prepared for the workout with good hydration, and then probably in your tail end of the workout after you already got like your main work going, or you got a pretty good pump, but really pumping the shit out of muscle. So whether it's doing 30 rep sets or just when it's, when the muscle is burning, but you just feel it swelling up, right? That's what you want. That's really all you need to do. But again, I'll give you a really good example when we get to one of the later.
Got it. So just get your electrolytes in order, drink a ton of water. Guys, and this is something that a lot of you high performers, people who are busy professionals, you guys ignore the hell out of this. So without going too much into this, just want to give a small example. So you all drink coffee. Your coffee cup size is this much. Your water should be twice as much, if not 3 times more. So keep drinking water. Stay hydrated. It's going to help you more than you realize. So back to you, Madison, without going off tangent.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. And just make sure you're having salt too. Don't avoid salt. Salt is a extremely performance enhancing substance. Plus, it will really help with your recovery and muscle building.
Dude, so like, with do you recommend like seasoning your meats, like adding salts to that?
Salt everything, man. Salt everything.
What about with like blood pressure stuff?
That's very few people actually need to do that, because if you regularly eat salt, your blood pressure will come and normalize. Your kidneys will balance out your electrolytes, and you'll be more hydrated because your body will retain water. If you have no electrolytes, your body loses water super easy, and you're not actually hydrated. Just drinking a shit ton of water can dehydrate you if you have no electrolytes to retain it. People that have the blood pressure issues, it's because they don't eat salt, and then you have salt, so now you have a swelling, and now your blood pressure goes up. But if your body's normal and normally has electrolytes, your body will regulate that, and that'll be normal, and you won't have blood pressure issues.
You got it. Cool, brother. Let's go into number 5. And yeah, this is good. So far, guys, we've talked about mechanical tension, metabolic stress, muscle damage, cellular swelling. And I told you guys this podcast will be heavy on content. So if you need to pause, take notes, because the last thing I want, this is what annoys me, guys. And I know Madison is the same way. If you guys are just listening to this information for the sake of knowledge, you won't get as much out of it. I want you guys to write this down and be like, all right, next week, how will I apply this in the gym? And that's why I keep wanting to bring up practical shit out of this highly scientific content.
I'll give like an example workout at the end, I think.
What is it?
I'll give an example workout at the end, using all the factors.
They would love that, and I think a lot of people will gain so much more value out of it. So whenever, and remember this, guys, for anything you read.
Go into the bathroom real quick. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You keep going.
Whenever you guys are reading information, reading books on whatever topic, health, fitness, wellness, finance, sales, money management, time management, any book you guys read, any podcast you guys listen to, don't just listen to it and not act on it, right? Like a lot of people say that, but the practical manifestation in it would be you consume something, you listen to this podcast, pause it after like a really good point is covered, write it down and be like, oh wow, I never thought of this. I can apply this into my own life. Remember, guys, success doesn't lie in listening and consuming knowledge. Success lies in the application part of it, executing on that knowledge. So if you listen to this whole podcast and you just got the 5 steps to muscle building pathways, and you don't apply any of it, or you don't digest the information enough to apply it, then me and Madsen haven't done our job. Our goal is to help you gain more muscle. Our goal is to help you optimize the time you're at the gym. Because remember what Madison said earlier too, the goal isn't to be at the gym for a very long time. The goal is to make the most out of, squeeze every second when you're at the gym. So if you need to pause the podcast, take notes, and be like, all right, mechanical tension, how will I apply this in my chest workout on Monday? Okay, got it, check mark. Metabolic stress, do I need to worry about that? Yeah, well, on shoulders day, my pump isn't there. I'm not feeling the burn. All right, I need to push the reps a little more. Muscle damage. All right, have I ever done that? Probably not for a lot of you. If this is the first time you're hearing about it, most likely you've never done it. You've never pushed the limit. So as we talked about how to do that. Then cellular swelling. Most of you is probably the first time anybody talked on a cellular level when it comes to muscle building. So how would you apply that? You go do that. So just like I want you to do is like take out like a piece of paper or something and write down the 5 things you'll do based on what you learned in this podcast. And leave a comment below and let us know how you are applying it, because we would love to hear your feedback. So let's dive into it.
Okay, so the fifth pathway is stretching. So actually stretching out the muscle and just really lengthening it, and just like if you think of a rope's not the best example, but if you think of a piece of fabric, right, or a sheet, and just really tugging it and trying to stretch it out, right, you're gonna get a longer sheet, right? It's gonna get more, and the body's also gonna adapt to that. It's gonna put more tissue there when you're stretching it out. So what this means is 2 things. Just because this will occur when you reach that stretched end range, right? When the muscle starts getting really elongated. So that'll kind of happen on its own when you're doing full range of motion. Now, I should specify that full range of motion is movement dependent. So in order to really take advantage of this, you need to use exercises and positions that are going to really stretch the muscle. So what this will mean is doing motions that have a really good stretch. So for instance, let's say on a lat pull down, a close grip lat pull down is a good example. That will get a really good stretch into your lats. Now you can also do forced stretches, which are a really good way to use this technique. So I'm also gonna roll back to cellular swelling here too. This stretching stuff is all at its most effective when you're really, really pumped. The more pumped you are, the more effective the stretch is going to be. And now if you also go back and think about that cellular swelling, if you think about that really full balloon, now you take that full balloon, now stretch that balloon. That balloon fabric is going to stretch more. So that's will feed back into also how you use the cellular swelling. You can combine it, a really good pump with a really good stretch. So it's what exercises you use, and then you can do 4 stretches. So let's say you're doing back, go back to the back example, and then after you've got a really good pump, now put on straps and hang from like pull-up bar or something in a position that you really just feel your lats pulling off your back, your scapula just sliding up, and just really and it's like for 30, you want to do at least 30 seconds to a minute of just, it's not like a relaxing stretch like like you're breathing doing yoga. It's the opposite. You want it to be like you want to put weight on you, have somebody pull you down. It's an active, and you almost want to contract against it too. You want to almost like pull yourself, but you shouldn't be able to pull yourself out. You should be stretched out and under tension. Okay, so that's doing it as a forced stretch, and then when you're doing stretching exercise, just really emphasizing that stretch portion of the range of motion and really letting it pull on you.
I like that. I like that. So now we're talking about stretching. So this is not like what a lot of people would think of stretching. This is not warm up, like before you go into work. This is not like that stretching. This is like when you've already done the set, when you've already pumped the muscle. This is when your muscle is already burning, and now you're going to push it a little further. Now you're like, after doing a good set, please use the example of deadlifts for on how you would use your lats further to do muscle stretching.
Deadlifts are tougher. Deadlifts will be like, this is so like, let's say you're doing deadlifts. I really wouldn't recommend it with deadlifts because deadlifts are a big motion, and it loads the spine, and if you start stretching, you might destabilize it. So
okay, let's not do that then.
I'll do a row, right? Let's say let's say it's a barbell row. Let's say it's a machine row. So you did a set. You got a really good. Now you're gonna go over to a pull-up bar, or another one I really like is you go to the lat pull down. Put the close grip handle on it. Load the stack basically to the top. Grab it. Don't sit on the seat. Instead, put your foot on the seat. Lean back.
Oh boy.
And it just stretches you out. So it's just pulling out, right? Those that can't see on the or listen to the audio, I'm just miming it out. But you're have one foot up on the seat of the lat pull down. Your hands are holding. You might even want to put straps on to the thing, and you're leaning, like you're kind of leaning and sitting back, and just letting the weight pull on your lats. So you do that while
That's
you're resting.
I think I've seen Charles Glass train one of his athletes that way. It was so good to see because, yeah, that's unconventional in most gyms, and most people have never seen that movement, but it's so good because I've tried it, and it pushes you, and it feels good. Like it feels like for me personally, I feel like that's when my endorphins really make me so happy doing it.
Yeah, and like you won't even do reps for it. You'll just for 30 seconds to a minute stretch it, but it's under tension. And what's going to happen? First, you're going to feel like your lat's going to start pulling up, your shoulder blades going to start sliding forward. It's all going to each time you do it, it's going to feel a little more released. And then when you let go, it's really funny because all of a sudden, you feel a lot looser, but all of a sudden, whoop, you feel this huge pump coming. And you'll actually get more because while it's under tension like that, it's actually it's that occlusion effect that I kind of talked about lightly before, that it's kind of starving blood a little bit. So you get more pump out of that too. So then that was your rest. Not that you were resting at all, because this should be intense. It should be like a painful stretch in the muscle that you want, nowhere else, just the muscle you want. And then you go back to your rows, and then you pump more blood in there, and then you stretch the shit out of it. Pump more blood in there, stretch the shit out of it. And it's really effective.
I think something like this would, if your cellular swelling with the salts and nutrition isn't on point, something like this would cause muscle cramping.
Yes, it could.
It could, right? What?
And again, you want to make sure you have a pump when you do this, right? Because we don't want to just like tear up the muscle. We want to do with a pump, and it's going to make it feel better. And you're going to get more pump, and they're going to build off each other.
All right, so stretching is, how often would you do this?
So I would do this typically kind of toward the end of the workout, and either you're doing a motion that has a really good stretch kind of built in. So like if you're doing chest, it'd be like a fly, and just really emphasizing the stretching portion and really feeling it pull open, or doing, like I said, a forced stretch, where like I give the example of the hanging from the pull-up bar, or that motion that I gave with the lat pull down, or if you're doing chest on that fly, it's a weight that you can't fly, but it's pulling open your chest. And you're also, again, you are contracting against it, but you can't win. It's stretching you open. So that's a couple examples.
Got it. No, I love that. So what is number 6?
Okay, so number 6 is really more of an X factor than it's a pathway. So the number 6 is fiber activation. So basically this is using as many of the fibers in the muscle as possible, right? So any given movement, let's say you're doing curls, as an example, right? Your body is only going to use the amount of fibers it needs to move that weight. It's not going to use any more. So if it's, let's say you're capable of using 100%, but for this weight, you only need 30%. Your body's only going to use 30% on its own. Now, to increase how many fibers are activated, there's several different ways. The most important is going to be the mind-muscle connection, and just making your body learn how to contract harder, which is a skill that you'll develop. Using more weight will force you to use more fibers. Also, being more fatigued will force you to use more fibers. And the reason this is an X factor, right? This is like your multiplication factor, because the more fibers you're using during all these other pathways, when you do an exercise, if you're using 90% of your fibers, those fibers are all going to get the hypertrophy effect. Versus if you're using 30% of your fibers, then only 30% are going to get that effect. So that's how much more you're going to grow if you're using more fibers.
This is such a underrated topic talked about in the market right now. No one talks about this. So give me like a good practical example of this, because I'm loving this part right here.
Okay, so practically, again, it's mixed into everything that you do, right? When you're using more weight, you're forced to. When you're fatigued, you're forced to. But more than anything else, it's the skill of that mind-muscle connection, right? And that's what separates the pro bodybuilders from from amateurs and beginners is they have such a good mind-muscle connection. They can use so much of their fibers, just on even with lightweight, which is why they can get so much out of lightweight. But again, just really, it's like close your eyes and just imagine the muscle, picture the fibers, and then just try to picture and feel them squeeze and contract. And every time you go to a contraction, your goal on the squeeze should be to make the muscle cramp. If a muscle cramps, right? The reason a muscle cramp is so fucking uncomfortable is because it just like locks up, and it's 100% contraction, right? Everything's contracting and it seizes up. That's a perfect contraction. If you could do that all the time, that would be great. But it's really not like possible. It's really, really hard to do that.
My calves have cramped before many times, and
but on purpose or just like in emotion?
After a good workout, like I remember in college this one time, me and my buddy were doing a leg workout, and we pushed it, and it was after a long day of classes, and my nutrition wasn't on point, my water intake wasn't on point. We do this crazy hard leg workout, and at the gym we had to get back outside, we had to take these stairs up, and I remember halfway through the stairs, man, it got me, and we go upstairs and my buddy buys me a Gatorade, and that helped.
Yeah, a lot of times cramps will come from an electrolyte will be lacking or something. I've had leg days where I'm so dead that if I just even go up onto a toe, or if I take a step, my leg just starts shaking uncontrollably, and you always had a good workout after that.
Yeah, guys. So I really like this part, fiber activation.
Yeah, and so I think the way to think about this one is your mindset on everything that you do. Right? It's for every rep. Don't think that, I have to do 8 reps right now. Think that for this rep, how can I get the most out of it? How can I contract as much as possible? How can I stretch as much as possible? Right? I want to flex it as hard as I can. I want to stretch it as much as I can per the given movement. Right? And so every set you do it, and also for all of these, and I'll go over this when we kind of wrap it all together. Knowing each of these pathways, what's going to be so beneficial is when you go to do an exercise, you should know what your goal of that exercise is. It's like, okay, I'm not trying to move as much weight as possible in this one. I'm going for metabolic stress. So I'm going for a pump in this one. I'm going for as much as a pump as possible. So you know what your goal is, and you can mentally focus on what the task at hand is and how to get the most out of each set, how to get the most out of each rep, because you know what your goal is, you know what your target is, right? And so knowing these things is going to improve your workouts, because you're going to know what you're doing for each exercise. And yeah, so back to the fiber activation. It's that mind muscle connection. It's mentally how you're going to do each thing. And a really great way that most people, and most beginners probably aren't going to have access to this. It costs money, but this is a really great way to hijack your system and to learn this, and it pays great dividends. This is something that's really, really cool. Most people probably aren't going to get a chance to do this, but it's a really worthwhile investment if you want to look into it. So there's something, have you ever heard of like a muscle stim device?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's basically a device. You put electrodes on your muscles, and then then the device, okay, so normally your nervous system sends an electrical signal to your motor units, which recruit muscle fibers. And that electrical signal makes them fire. And again, like I said before, your body uses what percentage it feels is necessary / needs, and it uses more fiber for more strength. With these muscle stim devices, you're putting an electrode, and you're basically bypassing your nervous system because you're supplying an outside electrical signal that makes your muscle fire. So you can basically get 100% activation, and so they're really, really cool. Sometimes you can do them on your own, but if you do them with exercise, it's fucking crazy, because you're like, you'll do a set of something, and you're like, normally this is how much weight I do, but also you're like, oh my god, this is moving like nothing, because the machine's making you fire at close to 100%. So you're like using more strength than you normally do. So it's a really cool way, and it will also teach you what using all those fibers feels like, which helps you develop your mind muscle connection, helps you get more at it, and it'll help build that skill. Not to mention, in and of itself is a really, really beneficial device. But they it's something you have to buy, and it's something you have to use. I think cheaper ones might be around the $200 mark, and they go upwards of like 700, 1,000 for more expensive ones. But a small one of the cheaper ones might be a good investment, depending on how serious you are. I have one. I fucking love it. It's really great.
But because I'm thinking in terms of like a beginner, young kid, young guy, or a beginner weightlifting professional. And in their head, they're like, how like one thing I hate is people not taking action and thinking that they need to buy that $200 fucking Fitbit before they do that.
This device is not for the beginners. This is for more intermediates and people who are more serious.
Exactly. And what's funny is that one of our I want to call him good friend, but he's pretty influential in the muscle building market. Mike Israel, and Mike talks about like when beginners ask him about the mind muscle connection, he laughs and says, "You don't have any fucking muscle to begin with right now. Let's get you building some muscle, and then we'll talk about mind muscle connection." And there is some validity to that, guys. Like when we're talking about fiber activation, like don't start spending like $200. But if you're a beginner to advanced, if you're intermediate to advanced, then you have room to play with all of this that we're talking about. And versus like if you're a beginner and you haven't had 3-4 years of consistent training under your belt, then a lot of this shit is not very useful. And most of you listening, and I'll fall into that too, where you have all this knowledge of big scientific words, but the guy over there who has 2 years less training experience than you has made more gains, even though he knows less than you. And the reason is he knew the right information and he applied it, whereas you consumed a lot of it, but application you didn't do very well. So remember, guys, like don't overwhelm yourself with information if information stops you from taking action, right? So if the goal is hypertrophy, don't memorize these big words and not apply them. That's why I'm so like, this podcast is so amazing, because we can talk about big science all day, but we're also practical motherfuckers. Like we take this shit to the gym and we apply it. We're not those guys that just give you this. Like there are plenty of biochemistry professors who are obese, have no muscles. They know all these pathways. They have written books on this shit. But most of them look like, for lack of a better word, they look like shit. And so try to avoid that.
Yeah, and when I wrap it up, I'll give an actionable like workout demonstration for everybody. And again, for the muscle stim device, I'm mostly sharing this just to make people aware of it. I'm not telling anybody to go out and get one, but I think it's a really good thing to know about, and just even the concept. Now, if you're a beginner, there's really no point. There's not much benefit in you doing this. You need to get the basics and the fundamentals down first. But hey, if you have $200 to drop and you don't give a shit about it, yeah, go for it. You will get something out of it. But if you don't, it is not worth the investment, right? You're better off spending your time and your money on getting those fundamentals down, getting good at the basics. That's always the most important thing. So for all these things, execution of the basics is the king. These are just some of the underlying principles, and we'll go over kind of a workout of how to apply them well. But doing everything well, which again I've tried to do my best to highlight the whole time, doing the basic shit well is what will get you the most gains and the most effect. Using these will help optimize and help get more out of it, and you'll be able to get some more variety so that you continuously progress. But quality basics is the most important. So you don't need to be rushing out to get this device. If you have the money to spend for it, go for it. But basics first. Okay. So I gave you the 6, right? So now I want to go over. Let's give a nice.
Now I'm gonna run to the bathroom. Keep talking.
Yes. Before you go, give me what muscle group. What muscle should I make the workout for?
Lats for sure.
Okay. All right.
Back.
All right. So I'm gonna give a back example for a back workout. Okay. So I'm gonna use all these factors, underlying pathways, and try and give an example of a way to optimize them. So we're gonna start in the beginning of the workout when you have more energy. First, I want to get blood. We're gonna keep the heavier and the harder stuff towards the front, right, where we have the energy to do it. But I also want to start us out with a pump. So I want to get I'm going to start actually with metabolic stress, and then I'm going to work into mechanical tension. You can also do the opposite of this, but in this case, for this example, I'm going to do it this way. So I want to put the mechanical tension on the already pumped and slightly stressed muscle. So the first exercise I'm going to have is going to be an underhand lat pull down. We're going to go for 20 reps on the first set, getting a good squeeze, good stretch, good tension, getting a really good pump on these. Then we're going to go to a 15, a 12, and a 10. Now, none of these should be so hard into failure that you're dead. They should all be short of failure, and they're still, again, good tension, getting a good pump. So that's the first exercise. 4 sets, 20, 15, 12, 10. The goal of these is to get a pump in your lats. So make sure that should be your goal, and that should be what you're accomplishing. So when you're done with this, you should have a good pump. Next, we're gonna get mechanical tension. So for this, we want to choose something we can really squeeze hard on and get a good, strong contraction. So you either go with we can go with a barbell row, or a Smith machine row, or even a T-bar row. And then we're gonna do about maybe a set of 10, a set of 8, and maybe 2 sets of 6. And there should be hard, strong contractions on those 6s, where you're really flexing your lats. Okay. So we'll do maybe one more mechanical tension, or we can go back to a pump. So let's say if you did it, so let's say that last one was a barbell. Now we're gonna go to a T-bar, and we're gonna do 20 reps for a couple sets, and then do a drop set on the last one. Okay, so Mo, to catch you up, first exercise was underhand lat pull down, like a medium wide-ish grip, 20 reps, 15 reps, 12 reps. Then that was to start off also with a pump. So that's getting the metabolic stress pathway. The goal of that is to get a pump. So you should finish with a pump. Next was going for mechanical tension and moving with a barbell row. We went 10, 8, 6, and 6. Getting really focused on really squeezing, keeping tension, and just strong, hard squeeze. And we're doing a little more pumping again. We're going to go to T-bar row, probably 20, 15, 12, 10 on that. Okay, so then we'll go to like a one-arm row, either on a machine or on a dumbbell.
One-arm rows for a lot of you, no matter what stage you guys are at. One-arm rows will do you justice.
The thing about one arm, and I didn't go into, like, we didn't really discuss any biomechanics in this one, so like I'm not really spending too much time on like I'll choose what exercise. But the great thing about one arm rows is because of the lats, the way they move, you can't get maximal stretch or maximal contraction unless it's one armed. You can only maximally squeeze and maximally lengthen when you use one arm at a time, because there's actually spinal movement involved.
See, guys, this whole podcast, if you just got one thing out of this podcast, is that one line he just said. like that's some valuable shit that you just don't get out of articles and a lot of online information. So pay close attention. So there are some muscle groups where isolated unilateral, which means one-sided movement, will get you more bang for your buck.
Yeah, lats are definitely one of them. Okay, so one arm row, either dumbbell or machine. I really like the the hammer strength as a seated one. Whether you sit on the seat or if you sit back from the seat, I really like to do that. So you actually like have your body against the end of the seat instead of against the pad, and one arm over with that, stretch, squeeze, maybe like 3 to 4 sets of 12. Then choosing something with like a really good pump, either like, I don't know, choose one. Give me something, a good pump and back movement.
Oh, that would be like pull-ups, but not really. Easy one, like you can do a V-bar lat pull down, just lightweight, just
maybe I got it. Yeah, a V-bar. Let's do a seated row because we're gonna finish with the V-bar close grip for stretching. All right, so we'll do that, get a really good pump, and then we're going into something with a good stretch. So that'll be that seated lat pull down, really emphasizing the stretch, and we'll even superset it with a forced stretch, that other movement that I mentioned, which I call stretchers. So you'll put your foot up on the seat of the pull down, same grip. We'll use that closed V bar handle, really stretch, and we will do reps with these. We'll pull these to our chest and then sit forward and really stretch the shit out. So again, overall, the way I kind of actually probably shouldn't force eccentrics on one of those two, but I forgot. So in one of those middle exercises, maybe on those T-bars, get someone to help you with some kind of forced eccentric or forced rep. So again, the structure that I set everything up with, I started with a pump, got some metabolic stress going, and just kind of initiate that, not too hard, not too fatiguing, just enough to get a good pump going. Then going into kind of the heaviest work of the day, really good squeeze, really good contractions, that mechanical tension, getting a little more, then going back into more pump, and then forced eccentrics, then getting the one arm rows, good range of motion, be pumping up one more time with those seated rows, and then stretching the fuck out of a really pump muscle at the end with the close grip pull downs and the stretchers.
I love it.
A quick example off the top of my head.
We have about 5 more minutes, so we'll conclude it. So guys, number 1, mechanical tension. Number 2, metabolic stress. Number 3, muscle damage. Number 3, cellular swelling. Number 4, stretching. And number 5, which is an X factor, and fiber activation. So go through the podcast. I want you to take just grab one thing that you get out of each topic, and then comment below or on the podcast or message us individually on Instagram how you will use these to build more muscle. And because that's more important than regurgitating this information to you guys. This is really valuable shit. And that's why I want to keep it short and concise. And most of you guys probably noticed me and Madison love going off tangent, but for this one, we talked about that, we won't go off tangent. We'll catch ourselves, and one of us is going to do more talking than the other one. Because when 2 of us talk, then it just goes off into a more of a conversation than a very scientific and valuable lecture. This is more of a lecture, but this was also a lot more of depth, practical manifestation of all of this. So I hope you guys get a lot more out of it. And just remember that your goal is to build more muscle. Your goal is to use the same concepts into other areas of your life. And the reason I love the practical stuff, that's why we're scientists, but we're engineered muscle. We're teaching you guys how to engineer this shit in a real practical way. And there's a lot of value in the science, but there's also a lot of value in applying that science into the practical stuff. So whenever you see a scientist, that's why I was calling a lot of scientists are fat. And they're our colleagues, but they're fat. They don't apply any of the things they know here. So we don't want to be that. But then you have a lot of old school coaches who are not looking into the science. They're just hardcore into their own old school methods. We're in the middle. We're learning from both, and we're teaching you guys that this is the best way to be armed when you go into the gym. To knowledge, but also writing these things down. So create rules for yourself. A real practical way would be hey, how can I assure that I get the most amount of muscle damage on back day? Well, this is what I'm going to do. On set number 4 on lat pull downs, I'm going to call up a buddy and I'm going to have him help me with the with the concentric, and then I'm going to use the eccentric to do this. So be practical, take notes, and learn from it, because the last thing I want out of this podcast is for you guys to just keep listening to it and not taking action.
Yeah, I want everyone messaging back in a couple of weeks been like, holy shit, that got me swole.
Holy shit, like that was powerful.
Right, because again, the engineer is the application of the science. So I just gave you some of the science, and then we gave you a few different ways to apply it. And I think, again, having the idea of that science in your head, and then taking the goal of that, and the thought of that, and the intention of that. That's the word I want. The intention of whatever you're trying to accomplish on that set for that day, for that rep, for that for that training, for that week, for that training block, whatever that intention is, and taking that and be like, this is what I'm doing right now, will get just that thought alone will get you more results. So when you go to do whatever set or whatever you're doing that day, think about why you're doing what you're doing. And that's a question you always need to be able to answer. If you can't say why you're doing a given exercise or a given whatever, you shouldn't be doing it. You should know why you're doing it. Right? Right. If I'm doing, why are you doing bench? I'm doing it for my chest.
Yeah, and for a lot of our beginner friends over here watching, most of you won't know why you're doing certain things, but continue to do them, continue to develop knowledge, continue to learn more.
It doesn't have to be. I think even a beginner needs to be able to answer that why, even if it's the answer doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be, oh, well, I'm doing this scientific. No, it doesn't have to be all sciencey. It has to be, why are you bench pressing? Well, I'm doing it for my chest. It could be that simple. But if you don't know why, if you're doing some exercise, and someone's like, well, why are you doing it? If you can't answer that why, you're not going to be getting anything out of it. You could be going in the wrong direction. You shouldn't. Why are you doing those squats on Bosu ball? Well, I don't know. I don't know either. I don't know why you're doing those squats in the Bosu ball. That's not going to help you. But just that, being able to answer the why will weed out the bullshit and the good shit. And I think that's an important skill, even for the beginners, to get down, is because it'll get you away from the time-wasting activities and make you focus more on the good ones, because you'll know what has value and what doesn't.
I love it. All right, guys. We really look forward to your feedback, and we want this podcast is for you guys. We want you to. This should be your go-to place when you need help, and you want to know what the truth is. When you guys come to us, we're not just like any other personal trainers who fucking got their certification over a weekend and they call themselves fitness coaches. We're not those guys. We've done the work. We hang out with the best. We spend time learning this stuff. Like, this knowledge wasn't given to us by God. Like, if you look at my stack of books here, you'll be surprised how much time I spend learning and perfecting my craft. And I know Madison didn't got to the place he is without all of that. So come to us to find the truth. Send us questions where you guys are like, bro, like, because we're experts. And I say this with all humility, because the reason I was asking the question, or the first one, like, coach, like, should I prioritize time under tension or should I prioritize more weight? I get those questions all the time, and a lot of coaches can't answer those, and Madison just answered it for you earlier. So when you guys come to us, I want you guys to be asking those questions. Like, hey, like, what should I prioritize here? Or what should my thinking process should be when going into this exercise or this training regimen? And a lot of you are great at, like, doing things, but a lot of you are not 100% great at executing it. So the goal of this podcast is to clarify the doubts, put the truth in front of you, and have you write out the things that you will be able to apply directly. So with that, guys, I'll go ahead and finish the recording of this. And please give us feedback. Reach out to us on Instagram. That'll be the best way to reach out to me. Shoot us an email, which will be linked in the podcast below. You can look me up as the daddy of fat loss on Instagram. And then Madison, what's your Instagram handle?
Macedon_strong, and you can follow me there for most things.
Yep.
Thank everyone for watching.
Yeah, guys, and keep making gains and stay in touch.
Peace.